In this video, I'll explore the question of whether or not Lazaris's message overall is misleading in a way that weakens people or sets them up to failure rather than being strong and being successful. So we have, of course, a wide range of statements, and some of them seem to contradict one another, and that's fairly common. Meaning, if you look at most teachings carefully, you'll find paradoxes and contradiction, and the reason for that is that there's value relative to one's position in going both right and left, right? So depending on where we are at a given moment and where we want to go, going left may be useful or going right. And so at some points you'll find, direction, go left, and at other times you'll have direction, go right. And unfortunately, there's not as much kind of focus on synthesizing those two different messages. So on, what I would call the sugary side of what Lazaris has said, let's kind of look at some of that. So things like the most monumental decade in humankind. That's already in the past, by the way, and so, that's looking backwards. And what about 1 trillion years from now? Do you just keep looking back to the 90s? Will there be no more monumental decades, or does it have a new name, a new age, a new age? So you have some of that. There's also a fair amount of talk about being the exceptional ones, the map makers, etc. And so there's a certain amount of ego boost in all of these types of messages that you're the ones doing all of this. Then you have things such as you create your own reality, and you create the consequences of your reality. So you can be famous and not be bothered on the street, right? Because you're creating your reality and the consequences, right? You can be rich and not pay taxes, or what exactly does that mean? But that is a recurring theme, that you can create your reality and you can create the consequences of that reality. And certainly, that has obvious drawbacks. Can you jump out of a building and not fall to the ground? Lazaris pushes into the thresholds of belief. He says, you could walk through walls, but why bother when there are doors, right? But as soon as there aren't doors, then by all means walk through walls. We don't see any mass exodus of prisoners, or, I've never encountered someone locked in a room walking through a wall, but so these are some of the the flowery, some of the I guess less grounded statements. And you can have it all. You can be successful. You can be as rich as you want to be, and all these types of things. And so this. Lazaris has also encouraged people to work with their metaphysics rather than go to a doctor. And Penny did that shortly before her death, as various complications continued to develop, and they didn't focus on doctors. They focused on whatever they focused on. And, again, the emphasis on creating your own reality, with thoughts, with paradigms, and with ideas. So, and the new age is coming, and you can have the dream, right? You can be part of the nightmare, but you could also be part of the dream. I think it's useful. It's now 2022, past a lot of these dates. The vortex of Sirius has opened, and all of these, whether it's 2000 or 2012, etc. I think it's useful, to look around and, the reality that I see. And Lazaris has primarily had an American client base. But, if you look at historians and you look at, for example, Ray Dalio's brilliant work on the rise and fall of empires and nations, the United States is on the decline and has kind of moved into decline, I think, starting in the 90s, and China is on the ascent, and so there will be a passing of the guard at some point in the next probably 50 years, where it becomes very clear that China is the dominant influence as that shifts to strong currencies and the like. Probably not that many Americans dreamed about, the demise of the United States as it currently has been over the last, 70 years as the dominant source of power and success and, the global reserve currency, etc. But that seems to be what's happening, right? And so there is a chance to, look at these things over time. And I think that there are some areas where, you can create a certain reality and the consequence of that reality. And perhaps you could define that area along, areas of threshold of beliefs. Again, I think it's been a long-term human dream to fly, and I don't know of anyone, Lazaris friend or otherwise, that can jump out of buildings and soar. In lucid dreams, maybe, not so much in outer reality. And so the question is, amidst all of this focus, has this whole message of the upside, the wonderful future, et cetera, to come, been empowering or disempowering? Has it strengthened people or weakened them in some way? Now, on the other side, Lazaris has said other things, right? So that's kind of more of the sugary side. But Lazaris has also said that negative ego, he said back in the 80s, I think it was, that negative ego was going to get worse because, the current generations were thinking less. That as the world gets faster, people in their adolescence don't want to grow up even more because it's too complicated out there. So the new age or the age of more negative ego and less thinking, right? So which is it, right? Lazaris has also said that, it's all about resonance, but he said by the time you walk out in front of a bus, your resonance falls very quickly, right? So, he's, on the one hand, walk through walls if there aren't any doors, but on the other hand, don't walk in front of a bus. The density in atoms and stuff for a bus or a wall, if it's a concrete wall or a steel wall, probably, in the same neighborhood. So there's, a little difference in that. And Lazaris has encouraged people to think and be rational and then move beyond it. Lazaris has also done relatively arduous techniques. I mean, there may be someone who's done all of the Lazaris techniques. I certainly haven't met them and haven't come anywhere close to that myself. There are tapes, many tapes that I've listened to that, it feels, I feel, bogged down with just the idea of doing, step one, which may have 10 separate steps to it, and then going on to step two, which has 3 or 4 things. And, Lazaris will rattle these things off, but, one of the disconnects with Lazaris's lecture style rather than, deeply diving in with people, like let's take one person through this process. I personally think that that's a roughly 1,000% more potent medicine is to take 3 people in a ongoing recorded dialogue through the whole process and just kind of rotate maybe 3 people in every event so that sometime over a several year period, everyone who's attending a workshop, et cetera, can have one of those really deep dives and really look at, what are the techniques, and then have follow-up, like, did any of those techniques work, and what is that like to have this, you're saying this, what is it actually like for someone? Do they connect with it? Like, does it mean anything to them, or is it just kind of an abstract idea? Because a lot of these things, take hours and hours to kind of sit with a statement, and then meanwhile there's many other statements that have occurred. And so penetrating, into that is certainly something that I would guess I have about 5% penetration of, after listening to some thousands of hours of Lazaris, attending, 15, 20 workshops, being some years in the forum, and doing, maybe 1,000 hours of meditation and maybe another 1,000 hours of processing, and doing that, in waves, my adolescence and 20s, and then again, more recently, after a break. I don't know, I would say that all results in maybe it's like 3% penetration. And there's another like 90-something percent that is kind of graspable in the head, or at least puzzleable, meaning I remember this versus this, and it's not, necessarily integrating, but I have, a mental grasp of at least memory of, what's being said and can think about it. But how to make sense of it when this was said and this was said, and then looking at the probability field in the community or in my own life, how does that add? How do those things, synthesize and come together? And vast amounts are not brought down into the amount of deep feeling and physical embodiment. And having a largely disembodied, being try to, talk about severe trauma or pain or this or that and just moving on, it's not enough time and presence to go into those feelings. So I think actually going through those things, with hours upon hours of individual work with people and more question and answer, I think that's, from my own experience of other interactive workshops, that seems to be, hundreds and hundreds of % more grounding and potent, and to kind of go through that together. Because every member in a group is a fractal representation in some way of the whole group. And so the whole group is able to slow down and kind of go through and understand the meanings of things. That's, I've never seen that happen, what it's like, and gotten feedback on what's clear and what's working, and did Lazaris mean that? I've never seen that happen in my entire life, with any human being interacting with Lazaris, and so that's certainly something that I think would be better. And so Lazaris has said, there will be those who have the nightmare and those who have the destruction, etc. Lazaris has also talked about discipline being an important part of work, and great athletes and having discipline and doing work with excellence, and having principles and character, and so. There is, Lazaris, in those areas is not coming across as someone just saying, play around and do what you want and it'll all work out. There's a lot of complexity, a ton of work. And so, I just got done writing a chapter on strength. And, one of the things that I realized as I was writing the chapter was that strength is built with discomfort. Now, Lazaris has said you don't need to struggle, right? That's, let go of struggle. And let it be graceful and let it be easy. It's easier to succeed than it is to fail, as Lazaris has said, which is, quite remarkable how hard people are working to fail, according to that statement. But I would see it differently. I would say that it takes more work, more thought, more consciousness to take a somewhat broken system and make it a little bit less broken. That takes more work. And, what do you call that? Struggle, work, discipline, thought, time, energy. Most of the things that I've done that have improved reality have involved me sitting down and analyzing the status quo, what's wrong with it, then imagining a better way of doing it, and then figuring out how to transition. And all that takes extra time. And once you've done all that extra time and effort, then it becomes easier. It's like manufacturing a car. Well, a lot of people would call that struggle. You have an idea, you're riding a horse, you have an idea, you're smithing metal, you're pouring iron into forms, you're inventing a combustion engine. Is that struggle? It's certainly effort, lots of it, lots of challenging efforts, for someone working in a car factory. You don't always feel like working 18 hours at that, or even 4 hours and carrying those materials, etc. But so that's I would say that the thing that I didn't come away from with Lazaris is the clarity that, for example, if you eat protein and bitter food, you're making your body stronger. If you eat sugar, you're making your body weaker. So as a general rule, if you want to know with diet, things that are highly nutritious, etc., are, generally speaking, less sugary than and more filled with protein and energy. Whole foods, are often going to be less easy and pleasurable to eat, but healthier for the body. You peel a carrot because it's got a little bitter stem, but often it's that bitterness that maybe cleanses the liver. If you want to get your body strong, well, then you have to run into your discomfort. Like, I don't feel like running, I just will walk for a few minutes. Well, you're not getting stronger, as strong as you do going into some of that discomfort. If you look at Olympic athletes and their training, do they enjoy getting up at 4 in the morning and running, 200 miles a day or whatever? No. But that they are stronger on the other side. Wim Hof with his breathing techniques and ice baths. Does anyone feel relaxed getting into an ice bath? No. So why does Tony Robbins do it? Well, one of the things, is if you choose with discipline to make yourself uncomfortable, you're less likely to make fear choices when you encounter discomfort, right? You're less likely to be cowed by that because you're familiar with discomfort. And so you go ahead anyway and do, and accomplish something. Elon Musk, who has accomplished more than 99% of, people on the planet, talks about eating glass and staring into the abyss. Talks about working 100-hour weeks and it's hard on the body. Talks about having to do his chores to manage Tesla and not particularly enjoying those chores, but they've got to get done. So those 100-hour weeks and that commitment and those risks, etc., are paying off in, amazing ways for humanity, right? But they're easy to watch and admire because I'm not working 100-hour weeks. But I'm also not developing many of the strengths, that Elon is developing with his regimen and discipline of thought, etc. And so I think as a general rule, and that did not come clear in this way, is credit card debt weakens you, investments strengthen you. Running and doing exercises strengthens you. Sitting around enjoying the moment weakens you. Eating sugar weakens you. Eating proteins and whole foods strengthen you. And so there's a pretty clear sense that in order to become stronger, to become better thinkers, you have to become more rigorous in thoughts and do more writing and analysis. In order to become emotionally stronger, we have to be present with uncomfortable feelings in our body and move through those feelings. In order to have a stronger relationship, you have to talk about the difficult truths. Yes, I'm attracted to this other woman, and yes, I'm jealous about this, and yes, this and that. That you talk about the difficult things, and your relationship grows stronger. You tell the truth when it's hard, and you earn trust, right? So in many ways, what's clear is that to grow, to become stronger, to become powerful, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially, right? Delayed gratification is the key to financial strength, right? I don't want to go to school. Okay, I'm not going to go to school. Or I don't want to go to school, but I want to have a great career. I don't want to save money, but I want to have, an investment fund. So the trade-off is more discomfort, more effort, more discipline, more bitter now in order to have better later, or more sugar, more lazy, more expedience, more avoidance now in order to have bitter, more bitter in the future. And that principle, right? How do you become stronger financially? Well, you study and you increase your earning ability. You put money into an emergency fund. You pay down debt. You work longer hours. Right? You develop something original and useful that can take 5 or 10 times, more the effort it takes to just do what everyone else is doing. That's how you develop financial strength. How do you develop physical strength? Well, you get up and run, you lift weights, you do yoga, right? How do you develop emotional strengths? Well, you look and see, what's my greatest fear today? What's my greatest pain at this time? And can I bring it present in my body and not avoid it and quickly change the channel and have a candy bar to avoid those feelings, but actually feel those feelings, right? And how do I get physically healthier? Well, I get into an ice bath, not a comfortable lukewarm bath, an ice bath. And then I have a sauna, and then an ice bath, and then I have a sauna. And then my body is healthier. And how do I develop spirituality, right? I become strong physically, emotionally, financially, right? So that I'm less afraid, so that I blame less, right? If I'm wealthy and healthy and strong, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, there's less self-pity. There's more self-confidence, right? And with that, less blame, more power. It's boring to blame other people when you've got discipline and you're got an interesting future that you're creating. Right? So that's becoming stronger, becoming tougher in all dimensions is what unlocks spirituality. It's if I'm weak and I'm powerless, I'm going to have pain and I'm going to have fear of pain and I'm going to have blame and I'm going to have envy. And it's very difficult to blossom, into a sense of interconnected synergy. But with, high self-esteem, high self-confidence, survival, security, love and belonging, talents and abilities, my mind naturally goes into being of service and trying to make an effort to be more. And that's exciting. In fact, one of the more exciting things that I've been doing in recent years is working 2 or 3 times harder than I've normally worked in order to raise as much money as possible for a nonprofit that gives me a sense of meaning and purpose. It's not sitting around and complaining that things aren't better or focusing on what's the most comfortable thing for me. It's acknowledging a larger sense of purpose and commitment to deal with some of the hard challenges that are being faced in different ecological and human areas. And that's that, that mission to become more is making me stronger. As I become stronger, my self-pity recedes. My gratitude increases, right? And so, but the focus on not struggling and the thing of the past and you created all and stuff, I think it's a distraction for me. It doesn't lead to these thoughts. So understanding the connection between powerlessness and hate is what led to this. So if powerlessness leads to hate, which it does, you cannot have hate without powerlessness. There's no basis for it, right? You have to have powerlessness and you have to have pain. And you also have to have a certain amount of perceived injustice in order to have hate. If you're not in pain, there's no basis for hate. If you are empowered and confident, there's no basis for hate or blame, right? If you lack confidence, if you're weak, if you're powerless, financially, emotionally, mentally, it's that pain will increase, and with it will come at some point hate. Well, I didn't see that clearly. I see it now psychologically, and so as I've followed a path of strength, pushing in, and I guess a video like this is something part of me wants to go to bed, but developing ideas, making an effort, growing things. As I become more powerful, able and willing to act in a way that creates more of what I want. Less blame, less self-pity, less envy, less fear, less weakness, less resentment. And I think that's a good thing. And so I would just leave with that awareness. Doing hard things voluntarily and repetitively, pushing in, saving a little bit more, making a little bit more, paying a bit more debt down, developing a bit more skill, thinking a little bit more, breathing into difficult feelings, breathing a little bit more, sitting for 5 minutes, sitting for 10 minutes, sitting for 20 minutes, sitting for 30 minutes, right? Going into these spaces, stretching and doing, yoga posture and doing it a little bit more and a little bit more, going for a walk, going for a run, taking a 1-minute ice bath, taking a 2-minute ice bath. These things are going into discomfort, exploring more, analyzing more, right? That these are pathways to strength. Eating less sugar, eating more healthy food, right? Eating more whole food, right? So that's a path of delayed gratification that builds strength, following principles that builds character, that I think naturally and ultimately leads to the spirituality that so much of metaphysics is stated to be about, but doesn't always lead to, right? If you pay attention, there's a tremendous amount of, metaphysics and metaphysical people that are more irritating, confusing, self-centered, narcissistic than other people who aren't as metaphysical, right? And so, this is what I'm reflecting on tonight.